Zij kristalchandeliers zoals de Harrington steed kas frekkertje lighter kras de boerum, splintering gold and red reflections against marble columns zet gestoet on move for over a century. Evergreen garlands draped in deliberatie ulgrens loans belustrates, each ornament correde to signal taste, lekkerse, en men is het never niet to as permission to je gest. Campaign vloed schim so earthly as guests drifted through the space interred to hid us and seal gowns, left of floating coport towards the vaulted ceiling likes make from an extinguished fire. A string quartet played something festive and hollow near the west wall. The melody dissolving in the background, noise beneath layered conversations about ski shorts, endowments, and European schools with waiting less longer than most careers. This night had been planned with precision. Not for joy, for theater. At the far edge of the room, beside a towering pine tree whose branches brought under the weight of heirloom ornaments, eastern coal stood alone. The tree had once belonged to H.A.'s grandmother. Each ornament carried a memory hint painted glass, tiny wooden stars, a ceramic bird with one wing slightly chipped. Lillian Harrington had insisted it be displayed tonight. A sentimental touch should call it. Ethan now understood it for what it was. A prop. He held a glass of scotch he hadn't tasted. The amber liquid catching light as steadily as his hand. H.A.'s navy suit fit him perfectly custom. Understated, intentional. Which is posture was straight, shoulders relaxed. Anyone watching closely might have noticed the stillness in him, the way HSS didn't search the room for approval. They didn't know it already left. Well, Lillian's voice sliced cleanly through the music. She stood at the center of the ballroom, commanding attention without effort. Her crimson dress clung to her like a declarative bolt, yet pensively, designed to dominate. Her lips curved the inte smell that carried no wound, only satisfaction sharpened to a blade. Everyone, she announced, lifting her campaign flute. If I may have your attention to. Conversations faded. The quartet slot, then stopped altogether. We have a very special Christmas gift to unwrap tonight. A ripple of anticipation moved through the crowd. Ethan didn't flinch. Marcus Harrington, Elena's younger brother, stepped forward. Later folded tucked beneath each arm like a prezi. Elias Green was white. Carolers practiced in rooms like this. Come on, Ethan, Marcus said loudly. Don't keep everyone waiting. Your wife has been generous enough to let you keep some dignity by signing here among family to. Family, the order caught strangely in Ethan's mind. He repeated it quietly, almost to himself. Family take. Eleanor Harrington adjusted her pearl necklace, the diamonds on her wrist catching light as her gaze settled on Ethan with clinical disdain. You should be grateful, she said coolly. Lillian could have dragged this through a coward 4 years. Instead, she's offering you a clean break to a pause, a thin smile. Though I always said you weren't quite right for our family too. Soft murmurs of agreement valid. These were Lillian's people. Old money. Quiet. Power. Generations of reinforcement that told Terem the word belonged to Terem by default. Ethan had entered this orbit 5 years ago as a rising architect, driven and, in Lillian's words at the time, refreshingly self-mad. I think it taken him far too long to understand the expression that attached to that compliment. Ambition was charming, until it threatened hierarchy. Where do I sign? Ethan asked, Vichaya's voice was calm. Almost gentle. Lillian's smile widened. She gestured towards the mahogany table at the center of the room, clear to holiday their cover as if nothing mattered more than what waited there. The devour's paper set it up it like a centerpiece. Right here, darling, she said. Let's make it official. You can go back to your simple life to. Horace flicked towards the entrance. Julian Blackwell stood there, perfectly groomed. Italian shoes gleaming, it is confident boerot and tonerend. He offered Ethan a smirk that set up a gradic erempelit. Ethan walked to the table. The pen waiting there was familiar slick, black, engraved there. A gift from Lillian on their first anniversary. Back when she still pretended. He picked it up. Look at him, Marcus whispered loudly. Is shaking? Tuck. A full guest shook I heard. They were wrong. Ethan's hand was perfectly still. He appended the folder, scanning pages he already knew by heart. Every clause, every concession, every trap Lillian believed would leave him diminished. Before I sign, Ethan said, lifting his gaze to Lillian, "I'd like to say something too." She sighed tearfully. "Of course you do. One last plea." She turned to the room. "This," she said, "is what weakness looks like. A man who can't accept when it's overt. It's not a plea." Ethan replied quietly. Silence began to settle. "It's gratitude." The word landed wrong. Lillian's brow arched. "For what, exactly?" Ethan looked at her. Really looked. Not through a hope. Not through a pain. For the first time, through a clarity. "For showing me who you truly are," he said. "For teaching me that some foundations, no matter how beautiful, are built on sand too." He signed. The first page. Then the second. Then the third. With each stroke, something loosened inside his chest. By the time he reached the final page, my story blurred his vision. A tear escaped, tracing a slow line down his cheek. The room reacted instantly. Laughter, smirks, satisfaction. "Ah, Ethan," Eleanor said swiftly. "There is no shame in crying." "Well, perhaps a little too." Ethan signed the last page. He closed the folder, pushed a chair across the table. When he looked up, another chair followed the first, but it just stopped the room cold. "It wasn't broken. It was free. Merry Christmas, Lillian," he said so swiftly. "Enjoy everything you think you want." 6 months earlier, long before the Chandeliers End campaign, long before the letter folder and the carefully staged humiliation, Ethan Cole sat in nature that didn't belong to him and felt the first true crack in the illusion of his marriage. The office was minimalist to the point of austerity glass desk, steel accents, a single abstract painting whose meaning Ethan didn't bother to decipher. The woman across from him didn't smell her unless there was a reason, and today that reason was strategy. Safira Alvarez closed the folder between Terem with deliberate precision. "Your instincts were correct," she said. "Your wife is having an affair to it." Ethan didn't react the way people expected in moments like this. No shouting, no dramatic inhale, no denial, just stillness. "How long?" he asked. "Approximately 7 months," Safir replied. "With during Blackwell. We have hotel records, photographs, travel overlaps, and communications that establish a consistent relationship too." Ethan leaned back slightly, as he hit on the glass wall behind her. The city skyline blurred, as if the word itself had gone out of focus. "I thought I was imagining Katie," he said quietly. "The distance, the contempt," Safir studied him. "You ain't imagining anything too." She slid another folder forward. "But infidelity isn't the most dangerous part of what she's been doing to it." Ethan looked down, fingers tightening almost imperceptibly on the chairarm. "Go on, Dick. Financial infidelity," Safir said. "Your wife has been systematically diverting marital assets into accounts you don't know about, undervaluing property, hiding trust distributions, preparing for a divorce where you outgrew with nothing and she keeps everything that actually matters to you. That did it. Not rage. Focus." Ethan leaned forward, jaw tightening, a sharpening. "What am I up to?" Safir smiled then. Not warmly, but with something close to admiration. "We play a better game than she is," she said. Quietly, legally, completely. Over the following hours, the pieces fell into place. Safir explained how Lillian had underestimated him at every turn, assuming he was too trusting, too grateful, too desperate to evacuation the world she brought him into. "She thinks you don't belong here," Safir said, which meant she never imagined you'd be prepared to it. Ethan left the office that night changed there. Not angry, rude. The next 6 months became a study in restraint. By day, Ethan was a perfect husband. He attended charity galas at Lillian's side, smiled for photographs being donor was engraved with Harrington names, listening politely as Eleanor critiqued his career choices in that backhanded way she'd perfected. He endured Martha's jokes, Julian's smooth glances. The subtle way conversation stopped when he entered a room, then resumed to eat toward him. At night, Ethan worked. Safir brought a team of forensic accountants whose job was to follow every dollar Lillian thought she'd buried. Private investigators documented patterns of luxury hotels, first-class flights, Weekends that didn't match charity schedules. Emails were archived. Receipts tracked. Conversations transcribed. Nothing was rushed. Nothing was emotional. Everything was precise. One evening, weeks into the process, Safir called him in to 4 office after midnight. Kaufi kop slid at the desk. Ik zou ze niet in te forfeitures but Horace who airbright. The prenuptial agreement, she said. It's invalidic. Itran froze. Odd. Multiple failures, she explained. Your wife didn't disclose cases. You ain't given their quiet time to review the document. And Horterny, she paused, lips tightening. He took an act of interest representing both her family businesses and her personality. So, Ethan said cleverly that George would. Through it out, Safir finished. In me noticed it. Ethan said back, absorbing IT. So I could take her for everything too. You could TRY, Safir said. But I don't requirement IT. He looked at her, surprised. WHY not? Because sure he dared divorces cost more than money, she replied. They cost time, energy, your peace. And here is something far more important here. She slittered not refilled toward him. Mia, it is daughter, 4 years old, dark hair. Courier says, Ale is that sounded like freedom. This, Safir said, is where we focused on. The evidence came quickly once they started looking. Nanny cycling in and out of Mia's life because Lillian soon be battered to adjust her schedule. Missed preschool pickups. Vacations taken with or her child left behind with strangers. Text messages where Lillian referred to Mia as David's responsibility, now on the divorce was finalized. Email discussing boarding school at a gay vibe. Ethan felt something cold and protective settle deep in Oichi's chest. She loves her, he said once, quietly. In her way, Safir met with essays. Love with or presence isn't enough in Kaurtu. They documented everything. They ate it, and they let Lillian believe she was winning. She fell on her terms, Safir explained during one Latinx strategy session. She offer you what looks like generosity but is actually designed to leave you deep in Dantu. And 10, Safir said calmly, we let her sign for an undoing toy. Ethan thought of the Christmas party invitation that he drove the that morning tip paper, gold in boosing, theatrical timing. She wants an audience, he said. Safir nodded. So we give her one to. There was only one thing Ethan struggled with. The silence. Sleeping beside a woman he no longer trusted. Listening to her talk about the future she didn't intend to share. Watching her play matter in public while outsourcing every moment of actual care. Some nights, he sat in Mia's room after she fell asleep, watching her chest rise and vow, promising him so would never let her grow up believing love was conditional. During one of those nights, he called to his parents. The aunts began in nearly 2 years. Not since Lillian decided they were too simple for Harrington gatherings. His father answered on the second ring. Ethan. Im Sauri, Ethan said. For notwithstanding. For letting my soul drift, there was a pause. 10 hours. You're here, which is matter set in the background. We always waited. That recognition became part of the plan to not strategic, but necessary. Because this wasn't about revenge. IT was about ye hit. By the time December arrived there, everything was ready. The aircon secured. The custody language embedded there. The evidence archived there, timestamped, and legally devastating. All that remained was performance. Ethan stood in front of the mirror on the night of the party, adjusting which's tie, practicing nothing. No speeches. No triumph, just patience. He kissed Mia's forehead before she left with his parents earlier that day. Daddy has something important to do tonight, he told her. Will you be set? She asked. He smiled swiftly. No, sweetheart. Be free. When Ethan walked into the Harrington ballroom that night, the war was already over. They just didn't know it yet. The first crack in Lillian Harrington's victory appeared 3 days after Christmas. IT was subtle, almost invisible. The kind of thing she would normally have ignored dismissed as administrative noise meant for her accountants and assistants to handle. She sat in the private sitting room of the Harrington estate, sunlight pouring through tall windows and warming the silk upholstery beneath her. A mimosa rested untouched on the side table. Her phone glowed in her hand as she scrolled through social invitations, vacation inquiries, and unread messages from Julian. Can she saw the subject line? Urkauwen closure confirmation. Her tone paused. She frowned and opened the email. The message was polite. Efficient. Clinical. IT confirmed the closure of an investment account and the transfer of its full bonds executed under her signed out for the 10% to finalize the wire settlement terms. Lilian's stomach tightened. She unauthorized anything. She dialed her private bank immediately. Emerson Harrington, the banker clicked it smoothly. Yes, the transfer was completed in accordance with the settlement documentation. Uot settlement documentation. Lilian snapped. There was no audit. There were no set reviews. He signed my agreement. A pause. 10. Ms. Harrington, perhaps you should speak with your attorney. Several forensic audits were conducted over the last 6 months and properly surveyed to your legal consultation. The line went dead. For the first time in years, Lilian felt something close to fear. 2 hours later, she sat in Harold Benton's office openlit. Su verfatsatingly familiar her matrainer beside her, spine rigid with ich pistation. Erod's hands trembled as he laid the documents across his desk. I made a mistake, he said. Eleanor stiffened. Explain to it. I assumed the miracle was represented by a general practitioner. Harold continued. Someone great fruit. Lilian's breath came faster. Who did he hire? Harold swallowed. Safir Alvarez to it. The name hit the room like a drop glass. Eleanor pallid. The settlement you approved, Harold went on, was not the one you drafted. Ms. Alvarez filed its own proposal that legally superseded ours. Through procedural substitutions, the document it signed was hers too. Lilian stood there abruptly. That's impossible. I read IT too. You schemed IT, Harold said quietly. Her voice sharpened. How much? Approximately $43 million has been transferred to Emercholis accounts. Additionally, the Riverside property, the Party art collection, and half of U.S. stock portfolio now belong to him. Eleanor gasped. MOI trust. His marital property owns distributions are concealed. Harold finished. He received exactly half it. Lilian sat down hard. And me, she whispered. I still have MOI doubt. Harold didn't answer immediately. You have visitation, he said finally. Supervised. Ethan Cole is the primary custodial parent. The ord burned. Neglect? Lilian spat. I never neglected her. Harold slid a folder forward. Photographs, emails, messages, everything stacked neatly, mercilessly. Lilian stared. She had done all of IT. She'd simply never believed the IT would matter. Across the city, Ethan Cole watched the Pacific sunset gold across the horizon from the living room of his new home. Mia slaved cut through the space as she ran from room to room, discovering windows that framed the ocean and a bedroom designated just for her. Daddy, she called. I can see the waves. Ethan smiled. Yes, you can, he said swiftly. Safir Alvarez stood beside him. The transfers finalized this morning, she said. They won't challenge IT. Ethan nodded. And Jern? Safia smiled vastly. Broke. Caught a wolf. He was hunting for money. Ethan exhaled. Some lessons. He knew. Had to be learned to eat without interference. Weeks later, Lilian stood in the same ballroom where she'd once to get yet Hans Humilton. Now IT was empty. Echoing. For sale. Her phone buzzed with another message from Julian asking for money. She deleted IT. At the window, she finally admitted the truth to herself. She hadn't lost to Ethan. She'd lost to her on arrogance. 3 weeks after the Christmas party, Ethan Cole walked to the sound of waves. Not the distant surgeon of water carried faintly through a city noise, but the steady, breathing courage with each of the Pacific itself south pressing through open glass doors, sunlight spilling across concrete flowers still cool from the night. For the first time in years, he didn't reach for his phone. He lay still, listening. Freedom, he realized, hit a sound. The house rose from the cliff like an idea vinyl lowered to his. Clean lines, flirted sailing windows, steel and wood buildings that inquired conversation. Ethan he designated himself not as a statement, not as a monument, but as a place meant to be lived therein. A home that didn't perform. Down the hall, small footsteps predicted across the floor. Daddy? Ethan smiled before he even opened each says. I'm in here, sweetheart. Mia burst into the bedroom, her hair tangled from sleep, a stuffed elephant tucked under one arm. She climbed onto the bed to eat without hesitation, caring against him as naturally as breathing. The ocean was lowered last night, she said seriously. I was saying hello, Ethan replied. She considered this, then did as if that explanation satisfied everything. They lay there for a moment longer, sunlight to our term board, before Mia suddenly sat upright. Can Grandma and Grandpa come today? She asked. I want to show them my room tux. Yet her chest tightened not with pain, but with gratitude. Ye call Terum, he said. I'm sure hate loves that toy. She grinned and ran off to inspect the water again. Ethan stood and walked to the windows, watching the horizon stretch endlessly before him. He thought of the Harringtoners' eternity, closed in on itself, designed to impress rather than shout. This house was the opposite. IT asked nothing. IT offered everything. Later that morning, Safir Alvarez arrived there, her heels echoing softly across the open space as she took in the view. Not bad, she said, a rare hint of humor in her voice. Ethan hinted her coffee. Everything finalized. She nodded. All aircones secured. All assets properly transferred. You and his attorneys have 70 hours to contest, but given the evidence, she shrugged. They on, take. Ethan leaned against the counter, watching me arrange seashell she collected along the beach below. She still doesn't know about Julian, he said. No, Safir replied. But she will. Eventually, Ethan considered that. It known about Julian's financial collapse 4 months long before the divorce was finalized. Emails between Julian and EGS brother, debt spreadsheets, conversations about targeting Lillian as a solution. He could have их посет IT. He chose not to. WI. Safir asked, as if reading EGS thoughts. Yet Hans Gaze stayed on EGS doubt. Because my life isn't about her anymore, he said. And because some consequences can be outsourced, Safir studied him for a long moment. You didn't just remain over her, she said. You walked through a clean-to. That was the goal to. That afternoon, Ethan opened a long ignored folder on each laptop. Call Architectural Collaborative. Inside were designated sketched overviews but never pursue community centers, affordable housing, schools, shelters. Projects Lillian he dismissed as beneath EGS talent, beneath their image. He remembered the night it shone her the sketches. She'd barely looked up from the mirror. Poverty architecture, she'd left. You're better than that. It closed the folder 10. He opened IT now. Einak sounded at the door. HS's parents arrived there with left handbags and grocery bags as if he had never been told they didn't belong. Which his father whistled swiftly as he stepped inside. You built this? He asked. Ethan nodded. Which his mother smiled, shunning. IT feels like you toy. That night, as Mia slept between her grandparents on the couch, Ethan sat with his parents and apologized. They waved IT Rui. We just wanted you happy, his father said. Ethan finally understood that love didn't demand sacrifice of self. IT demanded presence. We expressed. Ethan reasoning from Rejoice Design Group, without regret. Say Ben Harrington Architects first, with his employers second. Every creative decision filtered through a liquor's interests. Every design bent toward vanity. He rented a modest office overlooking a park and hired 2 young designers who believed in the same things he did, which his first care mission, a shelter for domestic violence survivors. Say, beautiful, human. One afternoon, as he reviewed plans, which his phone buzzed, an email from Safir. She was about the money, about custody, not about Julian yet. Ethan closed the message without response. Outside, Mia lived as each is matapushfjorun the swing, higher and higher, fearless. He watched Aram through the window and felt something settle into place. Not victory, alignment. That evening, as the sun melted into the ocean, Safir stood beside the door, briefcase in hand. One last question, she said. Ethan turned. The tears, she continued, at the Christmas party. Were they real? He didn't answer immediately. He remembered the room, the laughter, the judgment, the weight of Yehpestetyan's finally lifting as he signed each's name for the last time. Yes, he said finally. They were real too. Safir waited. They ran grief, Ethan did. They were relief. Every signature felt like a pinning a window in a room that he'd run out of air to. Safir nodded once. That makes sense. After she left, Ethan stood alone at the window. The ocean darkened as night fell. He thought about the 6 months of silence, the patience, the restraint, and about the life ahead, a life built on truth. 6 months after the night she believed that she had won, Lillian Harrington stood in the ballroom of her childhood home and felt like a guest in her own past. Spring sunlight poured through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes that drifted lazily through the air. We heard the chandeliers lit and the orchestra humming. The room felt given hours too large, too quiet. The marble flowers echoed beneath her heels, each a reminder of how empty the space had become. The Harrington estate was being sold, not because the family had been ruined not entirely, but because maintaining a property built for current abundance required a level of liquidity the family trust no longer possessed. The scheduled payments to Eastern Coal had changed as they met, and for the first time in generations, the Harringtons were being forced to adjust. The ord tasted foreign. Emma's Harrington. Lillian turned to see Rachel Moore, the real estate agent, tablet in hand, posture crisp and professionally neutral. The buyers would like a fine walkthrough this afternoon, Rachel said. They're particularly interested in the history of the property. Lillian nodded absently. The buyers were a tech entrepreneur and it is self-made, efficient, polite, new money. The kind Eleanor would once have dismissed without hesitation. Now they were the only ones willing to pay what their state required. Her phone vibrated. Another message from Julian. She didn't read IT. She deleted IT, as she had deleted the last 50. She discovered the truth about him 2 months after the drovers when creditors began calling for her directly, and assuming proximity meant responsibility. When she confronted him, he hadn't even pretended. You know what this was, Lillian, it said lightly. I needed money. You needed the image. We both got something to, except they hadn't. Julian had burned through his inheritance. Lillian had burned through her illusions. Eleanor appeared in the doorway, looking older than Lillian remembered her ever being. Marcus isn't coming, her mother said. He says he's busy too. Busy gambling through what remained of each city net, Lillian thought, but said nothing. They stood in silence for a moment before Lillian's paquet. Mother, she said carefully, did you ever really talk to Ethan? Eleanor stiffened. Why does it matter now? In trying to understand how I missed IT, Lillian replied. How we all did. She walked to the window overlooking the gardens Ethan had once wanted to redesign into something more natural, more alive. Should we toyed the idea? Too informal. He was planning for 6 months. Lillian continued. Building evidence. Preparing UGSC hit. And none of us noticed it. Eleanor's voice was cool. We noticed he didn't fit into it. That was the problem. Lillian said quietly. We were so busy noticing how odd he was and that we never saw how odd he was too. She turned, her voice breaking the speech herself. I saw his work featured in Architectural Digest last month. Orderable housing. They called him visionary. Eleanor waved a dismissive hand. Howard nabrutuk. Lillian left once, bitterly. You're selling our home because we aren't money would always be there, she said. Because we believed the status mattered more than substance to it. She pulled out her phone and painted a photo she discovered by accident. Ethan and Mia on a beach. Mia laughing. Ethan looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. Lillian's throat tightened. I need to see her, she said suddenly. Eleanor frowned. Juovi situation. I know the schedule. Lilian interrupted. I don't mean that. I mean really si horto. She could eaten before she could lose a nerve. He answered on the third ring. I want to see Mia, Lilian said. Not a formal visit. Just ice cream. Coffee. Something normal. There was a pause. Mr. Pisses is doing well, Ethan replied carefully. But it's fragility. In her matter, biology doesn't make you a matter, Ethan said calmly. Showing up does. The words landed harder than any courtroom ruling. How do I prove a change there? Lillian asked. Another pause. Start with therapy, Ethan said. For you, not to fix us. To understand why you made the choices you did. The line went dead. Lillian started her phone. Something creaking inside her not dramatically, but irreversibly. 3 weeks later, she sat in a small office filled with plants and soft light. Dia Claire Whitman leaned forward, expression open. Why are you here? Lillian's prepared speech dissolved. I don't know who I am, she whispered. I spent my life performing for a role I never questioned. Dr. Whitman nodded gently. Then let's find out who you are when no one is watching. Across the city, Ethan sat in his office at Cole Architectural Collaborative. Designers covered these projects meant to shelter, heal, and rebuild. His phone buzz with an email from Dr. Whitman, outright and brief. MS, Harrington has begun individual therapy and is making initial progress. Ethan closed the message and looked out the window. Mia saw it on the swing below, laughing, fearless. He didn't hate Lillian. The anger had burned through long ago. Maybe she would change. Maybe she'd learn to love without performance. But that doesn't his responsibility anymore. His responsibility was the child on the swing. The work on his desk. The lie built on honest foundations. As the sunset painted the room gold, Ethan thought of the Christmas party they left, the tears misunderstood. Tate thought he was crying because he lost. Tate never understood. He'd been crying because it finally won. Not money, not status, which is life,